Hello, everybody. I am back. I am here. I am live. Welcome to Beyond the Pen, where we ask those grueling questions about the publishing world to encourage you, to enlighten you, especially entertain you, and of course, to unleash your creativity while your publisher is at therapy, understanding why they have so many plot issues. Anyways, today I am going to be going solo. Chelsea is it GalaxyCon, having fun as usual, but she's in her prime. She's in her environment where she gets to have all the fun with all these wonderful cosplayers, book lovers, storytellers, everything between. And she's actually doing some little marketing for us too, so it makes it even better for us. If this is your first time being here, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. If this is your second, third, or even lifetime being here, well, you know what's going to happen. So I'm sorry. No, it's great. We love having you guys here. We love hearing everything from you guys. So obviously, first and foremost, to have you go to our website, beyondthepenpodcast.com, to learn more about us, to learn about our authors. I've got some blogs about some tips and tricks here and there, yada, yada, yada. You know the spiel. You know everything about us, as well as understanding that you can find our social media links there too. So let's just go to beyondthepenpodcast.com first, as well as understand that every new episode is uploaded every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on your favorite podcasting platform and YouTube as well. So with all that out of the way, I wanted to express our gratitude to you because we are also going to be talking to a lovely, lovely young lady who has went on a journey into one of the most beautiful places on earth, or at least on here in the United States. She went to Yellowstone. She worked at Yellowstone, but then she went back to Chicago. How? Why? I don't know. I would actually stay at Yellowstone myself, but it's neither here nor there. She went on a journey to find herself, to find out who she was at a very young age, and decided to write a memoir about it, calling it The Finest Things Club. The Finer Things Club. I can't even speak today. I apologize. Anyways, but the other great thing about having her on here is that she is a book strategist. She has worked with some big Inc. 5,000 industries in the publishing world. I should say 5,000 company industries in the industry. I can't speak. I swear. God, I swear. As a voice actor, I know what I'm doing. I swear I do. Anyways, here's the thing. We want to not only talk to you about some of the strategies that authors need to have to get on a list, but understand what the list is, what the bestseller list is. And of course, go into her story or her memoir and talk about the chameleon effect, having to deal with things that are the perspectives of other people on you comparative to what you truly are, and a few other great tips and tricks here and there about journaling and how it helps you with your writing over time. So without further ado, I will bring in the wandering sage herself, Miss Lauren Erickson. Hello, Lauren.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're happy you're here too. So first and foremost, please introduce yourself to everybody. And if you're willing, of course, please tell us something that we can't find about you on anywhere else besides here.
Sure. So, my name is Lauren, and I'm a very recently published author. My very first book, as was mentioned, is called The Finer Things Club. It came out like a month ago, so it's like brand new, brand new. But I was actually an educator for a while. I taught sixth grade, and I was like, wow, this is really scary and really hard. And I somehow ended up like pivoting into the book launching space. And I did that for a year, and I had no idea what it was. I really didn't know what to expect with a kind of job like that, but it opened up this whole like portal of just like, oh my gosh, there is like so much that goes into books and the business, most importantly, behind books. And so pretty much from that moment, I've been focusing a lot on helping to market books for indie and traditional authors, as well as just providing a little bit more insight onto just what it's about, like what it really means to aim to be an author, I guess, if that makes any sense. So it's kind of a mixed bag. So I talk about some book things, some strategy things, but I've got to, that's just kind of what I do right now. I just talk about books.
That's true. And if you go to her YouTube channel, which is called what now?
I think it's at Lauren Erickson, my handle, but the O in my last name is a 0.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course. She does put out a lot of interesting facts and tips and tricks here and there. Please go to her YouTube channel, support her just as much as we're going to support her. And then, of course, Lauren, if you could, just so we can get the book part out of the way, because we want to talk about your book. We want to talk about this memoir of the Finer Things Club. Can you give us a elevator pitch per se in 10 words or less of what the book is about?
Yes. So my elevator pitch is it is a coming of age memoir all about my experience living and working in Yellowstone National Park as a housekeeper. I'll just put that in parentheses if I can like squeeze that
There you
in.
go. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. You're good. I think this is something that we've already discussed in a previous episode about
Mhm.
why memoirs are so important and how they are truly something that need to be out there, that people need to look at some, because everybody's story is unique and it is important to tell. I want to talk about your book real quick and then we'll get into the listing itself, because there's something that happens in everyone's life that, in a majority of people's lives, I should say, I'm trying not to be judgmental, but statistically speaking, everybody goes through the chameleon effect. And this was a real part of your life when you started this. You did this at the age of 20, if I remember correctly.
Yes, if I remember correctly as well. It feels like forever ago, but yeah, I think I was about 20. I had just turned 20, I think.
Okay. So here's the thing about the chameleon effect. For all those who don't know what it is, the chameleon effect basically means that you're putting a mask on, that you're trying to be something that you're not, just to either take care of yourself as a survival instinct and to be accepted, or the sense of just out of habit anymore. Many of us, like myself, who are older, still deal with this, and we just call it a habit because it is. But for you, this was something that was very concrete from a very early age.
Hmm.
How has this affected your writing, either in a good way or, in the negative side?
I feel like with the whole chameleon effect, it allows me in some ways to write from a variety of perspectives, which can be a good thing, but other times it's like you have so many perspectives to consider that it's like, what is mine? Like, what is it that I really want to say? And so for me, when I was writing the book, like almost like my mantra, or like, the thing that I kept telling myself is like, just tell the truth. Like, just tell the truth. Because the thing about memoir that I've learned, that I've heard from other people, is that people are going to remember the story differently.
Mhm.
And it's so hard to want to appeal to everyone's version of the story. But this happens to be mine, and I happen to be telling it in the way that I'm telling it. And this is what is most honest and true for myself. So it was almost in a lot of ways like an exercise of like getting grounded in yourself. And it's like, what is it really that I want to say? Because if this is my book and it's my opportunity to say something that's very true to myself, and that may very well be true to other people, then I need to get this right, get it right for myself and really try to be as clear as possible about it.
Which is very true in any memoir or anybody's in life in general when you're writing the stories that we live, because these are actual events. These are, like you said, this is from my perspective. This is
Yes.
from my life, from my eyes, not yours, not anybody else's. But this can also be very difficult to do, especially when you have that perfect doll like life. Everybody sees you in a certain way. You are the 4.0 GPA. You have this life as being a cross country runner because your dad was a
Mhm.
cross country runner, being a someone who is very good at speaking, because your mother was good at speaking as well, and delegating and all these other things about topics and stuff. When you started to journal, because that was your way of being yourself, your safe zone, how long have you been doing that from the time you started to now?
Probably the better part of like 20 years. And it was so interesting because when we were like right in the middle of COVID and, like everyone was at home and didn't really know what to do with themselves, I was like, I got this idea, and it was to like go through all of my old journal entries, like all of the ones that are like in the basement, like in the boxes from like forever ago. I got all of them out, and I guess more as like a project to myself. I organized all of my entries in chronological order and like put them all in like one giant like Word document, which on its, I think I flew through it. I don't know why, but I just like tore through it. I think I did it in like a couple days or something. But like seeing that kind of like evolution, that like inner evolution of kind of coming into your own, it was really interesting to like see like what patterns are still happening in my life. And I was lucky enough to get that kind of bird's eye view and just see how much of my life I told through journaling, and how that's kind of come out in the end as this like, book, this memoir, just considering everything that I have to say, everything that I've thought from, 7 or 8 years old until now. I try to be very intentional with, what I know, where I'm at, where I've been, and kind of package it neatly for someone else to maybe resonate with as well.
So basically, you created your own book of life, per se.
Yes. Yeah. Like a very rough draft version, but yeah.
This is your life. And for those who don't get that reference, you are very too young. Sorry. I'm glad that you're telling us this, because again, 20 years, that's a lot of stories. That's a lot of feelings to really go back and rediscover. And sometimes they can be painful. Sometimes they can't. Sometimes they're just freaking hilarious. Like, why did I do that? How did I do that? How am I still here? Kind of thing. I want to ask you this from a technical point of view. How has journaling helped you in your writing and detailing all those emotions that you were going through, again, from the age of 8 to now?
Yeah, I think having journaled so much kind of helped me really exercise and like stay in tune with my own inner voice, if that makes any sense, and just
Mm-hmm.
developing that voice. Because I've gone through the process of like trying to pitch to agents and stuff, and I don't have an agent or anything. I just published with a small press. But that's the thing that I saw in so many of their like submission requirements is like, we want to represent someone with a strong voice. And I was always like, what does that mean? That's so subjective. But I feel like having journaled so much, it's just helped me get really comfortable with how I say what I have to say, if that makes any sense. And just like recognizing my own thought patterns and the kinds of patterns that I have in my thinking and my reflection. And I think it's the introspection for me that was really the key of just like developing that voice and self awareness to be able to tell a story that is special for me, but could also benefit someone else. Because for me, it's always a two-way street. Like the book was for me in the beginning, but in the end, people are going to read it and I want them to get something out of it too.
I hope so, because I did. Because when I'm looking at this, like, for example, I am looking at chapter 3, per se. And one of the things, just to remind you what it was,
Yeah.
chapter 3 is about when you're actually getting to Yellowstone for the first time and dealing with the drive itself, losing
Mhm.
GPS on your phone. And that's hard in general for, a 20-year-old. For a
Yeah.
young person, not to have the phone, not to have internet, oh my God, it is like destruction. It is Armageddon for many people. I wanted to read something, because when I was going through this, because I always read the books out loud to myself, but one of the things I thought was hilarious, and I'm sorry you had to go through this, as I drove, a collection of little canary yellow cabins appeared on my right, sequestered among generous clusters of pine trees. Behind the little neighborhood of houses were two matching buildings, one much larger than the other, with its grand colonial revival architecture. That one had to be the Lake Yellowstone Hotel, where I expected I'd be working, with a smaller one behind some motel-like version of it all. All three locations butted up to a large shared parking lot where a few lanes were blocked off by a velvet rope, which I assumed to be some kind of VIP parking. Okay, so the reason why I read that specific piece was because of the detailing. And because of the fact that you were doing this when you were 20 and you're writing it at your age now, which I will not seclude because you still look 20.
I'm old.
It was last summer that this happened. We understand. We got it. Those are details that only journaling, excuse me,
Yeah.
would be able to tell you what it looked like.
Yes.
I can definitely understand why you used this revised version of the Book of Life
Yes.
to help you get those details out. Do you think, as someone who's done this, is this something that every memoir writer should start to do before they even get into writing the actual book itself?
I would say that it definitely helps. I don't know if I would have to like apply that as a hard rule to everyone, but I would say that it definitely helps. It's almost kind of like having like backup support. It's something to lean back on of like, hey, what was that thing that I can't remember? That really specific detail. Oh, I probably have it written down somewhere. Like it helps with that, but it's also like, you know, the way that it happened might be different from the way that you remember it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like who knows, I could have totally gotten the layout wrong. But having those journals and those old entries to rely on really, really helped with not just the structure of it and like describing my own like inner narrative, but also just kind of painting the picture for everyone else because it's easy for me to see it in my own head. But like how I wrote it down is almost kind of like a guide or like a template for like maybe how I could translate that into like story form for someone else. It definitely helped with that for sure. I would recommend it.
Yeah, because there was even a point where you were talking about the bison and the way that it looked when it was shedding uh,
Yeah.
fur,
Hmm.
and also to the point of when you were. I hate to say this, but the first time you saw a grizzly bear on the road.
It was really intimidating.
Yeah. We'll,
Really.
we'll definitely say that grizzlies are very intimidating. If you're not intimidated by a grizzly bear, you need to start talking to a therapist
That's a problem.
because there is a major problem in
Yeah.
your survival code. But going from that, because when we're talking about these techniques, when we're talking about these experiences, we're talking about a genre that relies on your memories being as crisp and clear as possible.
Yeah.
Because if there's anything I know of as a growing book enthusiast and someone who is actually learning more about the publishing world every day, there's a lot of things that get involved in that, especially
Mhm.
with memoirs, because memoirs are very, like you said, a certain
Yeah.
perspective. And when you're trying to share something to somebody, it really becomes this level of, okay, can I believe them? Because this is authority. You're giving your authority on a specific subject. When you're trying to look at these goals of, okay, I have a story to tell. Here's my,
Mhm.
is that more important than to go to somebody and say, hey, I am the number one bestseller on Amazon, New York Times, USA Today?
So you're asking like, is it worth like showcasing this is a story that I had to tell versus like these are the accolades that come with the story?
Yes.
Yeah. I want to say that it almost kind of depends on your audience. If you're like, putting together like a website for yourself or something, or, posting something on LinkedIn, a lot of professionals and people and agents or whoever, you're going to get a lot of different people viewing you. But I think if you're wanting to access the reader, every reader loves a good story. I mean, people in general love good stories. I feel like I've had more responses, like positive responses from saying, "Oh, this is an experience that I have to share." I've gotten more positive responses from that than like number one Amazon bestseller or something because the bestseller, I mean, you could hit bestseller for 5 seconds and call yourself a bestseller versus someone who's been at the top of the category for like weeks at a time or something.
Mhm.
I think it's good for like, kind of putting on a nice, shiny, put together image. But I think if you're really wanting to just access curiosity, I think the story is a great way to do it. And for me, the story is the fun part anyway to tell. Because I get a lot more questions about, oh, what was that like? All this stuff versus like, oh, what was it like being bestseller? It's more fun to just to tell the story personally. It's just got a little more substance to it, I think.
And I think that's something that when you're starting to write your first book or even write your 15th book, you know,
Yeah.
the story itself is the most important thing because that is going to be something that people are going to read over and over and over again. If
Hmm.
they've got it at a library, guess what? They
Hmm.
may be going out and buying it so they can have it themselves and let someone else have that book. The reason why I'm bringing up the bestsellers list is because I hate to say it, but it's a ruse. The bestsellers list is a reflective ruse because as I was doing my own research, and even the New York Times says it itself, is that it's very reflective of what the people at that company say is good and what's not. And it's not based off of the Nielson BookScan. Now, for those who don't know what the Nielson BookScan is, look it up because it's very important when it comes to writing books, selling books, because those are the things that people are looking at. Can you give them a little bit insight on what the Nielsen BookScan is?
Yeah, it's basically a database of sales, just all kinds of book sales. Different stores, different retailers, different outlets, even online stores. A lot of them report their sales of their books to Nielsen's BookScan. And now I think it's called like Circana BookScan or something like that. But it basically just collects sales data. And you would think that that would be the primary thing that determines a bestseller list since it's got more of a comprehensive view. Bestseller lists aren't always based on those figures. And like you mentioned, the New York Times, for example, is very much a curated list versus the Wall Street Journal, let's say, which is more closely aligned with, the BookScan database. It's like you said, it's so random. It just seems so random. But yeah, it's basically just a giant database that a lot of people and businesses refer to.
Which is something I think that if you're going to be coming into the publishing world as an author, that is something that you truly need to understand. Even as a book enthusiast, I think it's something that people need to understand about these lists because there's 5 book lists, I believe right now. So you have Amazon, you have USA Today, Indie something, I can't remember Indie Cook or something like that.
Okay.
Then you have obviously the Wall Street Journal and then the New York Times. With these lists, like we said, they're very difficult to get on.
Yeah.
As a new published author yourself, newly published author, was it ever your goal to be on this list?
Not really. I thought honestly my biggest priority was to make the thing and then number 2 get a good reaction from it and just have people like it and enjoy it. And for me personally, anything that came after that was a bonus. I think if you're gunning for a bestseller list, that's really great for if you're a business owner and you're writing a book as like a marketing technique, or if you're wanting to bring in more clients or like elevate your authority in a particular field or something. But I feel like if you're just wanting to tell a story, for me, the story was the most important part, and hitting Amazon bestseller was like, well, great, that's awesome, that's great news. But I think people just care about a good story at the end of the day. That's what I wanted to prioritize over everything personally.
That being said, because you're seeing it from 2 different points of view, right? You're seeing
Hmm.
it as an actually published author
Hmm.
and you're seeing it as a book strategist. That being said,
Hmm.
one of the other things that you really talked about in your book was about how our accomplishments are more completed out of fear than they are out of just because we want
Yeah.
them to be there. As a book strategist, would you agree or disagree to this, that this is something that you're seeing more people doing out of fear or out of just, hey, I want to be one of those known as a best selling author?
I'm wondering if part of it is just due to plain old FOMO, the fear of missing out. Like everyone wants to be a bestseller, everyone wants to hit
Thank you.
Amazon, everyone wants
Thank
to,
you.
have like the shiny plaque on their wall. Um,
The new shiny. It's the new
yeah,
shiny thing.
yeah, like it's great. That's awesome. But I guess it depends on what you're wanting to use the book for. If you're using it as like a marketing tool, then great. Maybe hitting Wall Street Journal or Amazon or something is your goal. But if you're wanting to write a book for people to read, then I would consider just the bestseller stuff more of a perk. That's just how I frame it in my mind.
Understanding, again, with the Nielson BookScan, it only deals with sales from physical books, and it's
Hmm.
not really elating to sales in ebooks because, again, that's still something they're working on, to my knowledge. How do you think publishers need to approach these international markets and translations, and when considering the adaptability of the book for these different audiences and cultures because of this list?
Yeah, I feel like you hear about that so much with these like huge authors, like, just Stephen King or, any of these like big names. And I feel like that can very much like romanticize what book publishing can be for a lot of people, especially who are starting out and are new or young authors or, trying to create a name for themselves. But I mean, again, I guess it's just like if your goal is to spread your message or share your story, then, and you think that someone from a different culture could very much benefit from it, then, like, yeah, that might be a great conversation to have with your publisher or, to read your contract a little more closely and just see if that's taken into consideration. I know for my publisher, I think it's international on just like online retailers only. My book, it's not like in physical stores or anything. But I guess that's the great thing about having more digital retailers is that it can be more easily distributed, whether it be like ebook or I don't know, maybe if they have printing abroad. I don't know the specifics of that. I think it's just a balance of like managing your expectations with international rights of like, oh, if I go international, it means that I'm an international bestseller. Not necessarily. There's so many little like technicalities just everywhere in publishing. So many like buts and it depends is, and I think I said that wrong, but
No, you're good. Yep, you're
came out a
right.
little funky.
No, but
But
it's true though.
yeah. Yeah. So I think it's just like, and that's probably my biggest advice is like as early as you can identify like a why you're even writing the book and B, what your personal goals are. Because it's so easy to be like, well, naturally I want to hit bestseller. I mean, do you? Does that really matter to you? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. So that, when you have these opportunities to, go international or have a book that's on like international retailers or something, it's good to kind of check back and be like, yeah, I think this kind of aligns with, what success looks like to me personally. Yeah, I think it's yeah, there's a lot to consider.
Definitely on that. There's so many. That's what I was saying. When you look at these lists and how reflective they are, depending on who's writing them or where they're
Mhm.
coming from, and the data that's being used, there is a sense. And by the way, you can go to the New York Times and you can actually read the actual article itself. They actually built it up and they actually said it themselves because they were being truthful. But, anyways, they went to court because he was saying that he was selling all of these books. He had
James
the,
Patterson? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Was it James Patterson? Because he was saying, "Oh, I sold more books than what was on the list," and they didn't recognize him for it.
oh, it was William Blatley who wrote the novel The Exorcist, because he more than sold than 10 million copies and obviously became a famous movie. But initially, it did not appear on the list. And so when he tried to take the New York Times to court because his name wasn't on the list, even though he was making all of this slot. He was saying he was losing millions of dollars in sales because of it. And then, unfortunately, the New York Times defense was stated that the list did not purport to be an object compilation, of the information, but instead was an editorial product. And they
Mm,
took this up all the way to the Supreme Court, and he lost a lot of money based off of that. And because of that, now these lists, that's why I'm saying these lists are so reflective, and they're just all editorial, and that's it. They're not
yeah.
based off of direct actual data. With all of that being said, because I think this is so important, and with your expertise on both sides
Yeah.
of the publishing world now, you
Hmm.
have that different thought process and seeing how people can get their name out there. That way they can get to not only the data on Nielsen's book scans, but
Hmm.
also in the ebooks as well as on the lists. With it being so competitive, how do you think aspiring authors can build their platforms and attract the attention of these publishers and of these editorial lists?
I mean, so it's so much like a chicken and the egg thing because a lot of it has to do with luck and timing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so I hate to say that, but so many publishers and successful perennial authors have said that. But it's very much chicken and the egg because books influence trends, but trends also influence what books get published. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I say timing and good luck. It's just like I wish there's something that was more tangible, but like, numbers, of course, platform, that's like such a popular question of like, how many followers do I need to have or newsletter subscribers do I need to have to get published traditionally? And like many other things in publishing, it's just so darn subjective and you're going to get different answers from different people. And there's a big debate that's happening right now because there's a lot of shifts happening in the publishing space, just business wise. And a lot of agents, for example, are thinking, it shouldn't just be about the numbers. You can have 200,000 followers on Instagram with very minimal engagement. So it's just there's so many things that just have to work right. The timing just has to be, I don't know, just so right for the moment. And it's very much like lightning striking, It's like how there's two signals that come together and when they meet, that's when the lightning happens. But I think it's just considering what your goals are, getting lots of different perspectives from different people, doing your research, listening to this podcast. There's just inform yourself as much as possible, I would say, for the particular kind of genre or books that you want to be known for. But there's so much that has to happen at the same time for it to just boom, like take off. Like some of these debut authors that you hear about, they just have such a massive entrance. Colleen Hoover, for example, her name is everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure she self-published at first and then got bought out by one of the bigger five publishers in New York City. Now she's got like three different titles on the New York Times. There's just so much has to happen. It's just ridiculous. But timing is a big part of it.
Money's a big part of it too, because there's a lot of politics that are involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we say it's an editorial list that
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at. Most of this stuff is more towards the traditional publishing.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking at self-publishing, because that's one of those big things that's starting to increase in the publishing world's profits, is that actually it's cutting into their profits, I should say, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that these big traditional companies, by the way, is where all these numbers are coming from,
Yeah.
even in the indie scene, they're not seeing as many profits because not a lot of people are going to them specifically to publish their stuff. With that all being said, I want to thank you for being on here because it is one of those things that I think we need to bring a lot of people that have been on both sides of the publishing world
Mm-hmm.
to give that insight into, especially when it comes to self-publishing. Because again, self-publishing is something that's on the rise, especially with ebooks, PD, and digital copies, all this other stuff, because there is a difference between ebook and digital copy. There's a major difference. We'll go into that at a different time too. But now that we've talked about the publishing world, now that we've talked about a little bit about your book, by the way, everybody needs to go out and get this wonderful memoir because it's so, like I said, it's very poetic. It's very poetic. I want to know about you now. We wanted to learn a little bit about your experiences. So, first off, what is your writing kryptonite?
Honestly, the act of writing scares me. And it's like I very much have to like really like I have to have the perfect environment to feel like I can give my attention to the page, because it's like when you start, it's like you have no idea where it's going to go. It's literally a blank slate, and it's like this could be the next horrible thing that I write, or it could be the next best one. And so I think the unpredictability of what happens when you write, or the kind of day you're going to have when you write, can can scare me a little bit. But yeah, I procrastinate so much with writing. They say that writers, what is it? I'm going to butcher it. It's like writers dislike writing, or writers are scared of writing, or something like that.
So, let me ask you this as a follow up. Are you a plotter or are you a panter?
Oh my gosh, I'm so the first one. I'm very much a planner, and I don't know if it's like a memoir thing or what, but I got a poster board from Walmart like a couple years ago, and I did a whole story map with like post-it notes and like these arcs and graphs, and it was ridiculous. I didn't even follow it. I just followed what was in my journals, but I'm very much the first one.
So it basically looked like a police station, just
Yeah.
homicide spot.
It's in my closet right now, but it's like it's all folded up and in the back corner. I'm like, we don't need to talk about that, but it was.
No one talks about the plotter.
We don't
No
we
one
don't
talks.
talk about the planner in the closet.
Is there a quote, a person, a song, something in your life that inspires you to continue writing?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I'm not really a big Pinterest person, but I have a whole board dedicated just to writing quotes. But I mean, I have to go with Stephen King's classic advice from his book, which I highly recommend, on writing. It's so amazing. But he's just like, if you want to write a lot, you got to read a lot. And it's like if you're someone who is more story driven than like marketing driven, meaning you're not like writing a book for a company to sell and up, stuff like that. If you want to tell a story, read a lot of books, and it's just so nice. One just feeds into the other, and it's like, oh, I can't talk right now, I'm reading a book so that I can write one later. And give me a lot of permission to just like keep reading.
Stop talking to me. You are
Right.
embedding into my reading
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
If you were to write a fictional book, would you actually write people in your life into it and then immediately kill them off because they pissed you off? Or would you hide it?
Oh my god, what was the latter one?
Or hide it?
I mean, if I really, really detested someone, probably. But I'm definitely not a hateful person. So I think I would just like torture them a little bit, but not necessarily kill them off. Get out some aggravation.
I think I need to rephrase that question a little bit. Are you petty enough to kill someone off that pissed you off in real life, to kill them off in a book, specifically just because they pissed you off?
Like specifically just killing? Probably not, because I feel like I would think to myself, I'm so much better than this. Like if I'm writing it, I'd be like, come on, Lauren, we can work through this. But probably if they had to die, I would say probably not.
Well, you already said it too, though. You would torture them. I'm going to make you suffer.
Like, don't mess with me. I'll put you in my book.
Moving on
Yes.
now. Final question.
Sure.
What is next for Miss Lauren Erickson?
Oh gosh, you know what? I'm working on that right now, actually. I'm wanting to really put together a whole brand that is dedicated to helping people get published in a way that helps prepare them for what to expect because there's this inevitable shift that happens from the craft of writing a book to the business of publishing one. And I don't feel like many people talk about that transition or that space in between. So I would love to talk more about that and create more helpful content or experiential content for people to really kind of help manage expectations, feel like they know what they're getting into, and kind of feel like they have a bit of a plan. Because for me, when I was writing a book and everything, it's like, where do you even start? There's like 10,000 directions. What am I supposed to prioritize? Where do I put my focus? Like, I need a mentor, kind of figure. So I would love to position myself as kind of like a help, as like a guide for people to lean on. So that's kind of what's next, I guess, broadly.
Well, Lauren, thank you again for being on the show. I hope that all of that goes
Oh, thank you.
directly as you plan it, since you are such a plotter. Just try not to
Exactly.
just put it on a poster board instead.
I know. If we can avoid the poster board, we'll be good.
Avoid the poster board, yes. Tell us where we can find you, the new events, or anything that you're going to be involved in. The floor is yours.
So, my book is available at thefinerthingsclub.life. If you go to that website specifically, you'll get access to different bonuses. You can read the first couple chapters of the book for free. You just get a whole lot of cool stuff. Some of the bonuses are like a playlist, all the books that I read when I was in Yellowstone. So feel free to check that out. Otherwise, I'm very active on Instagram. And my handle is Lauren Erickson, LaurenErickS0N, because the regular one was taken. And what else? My website is Lauren Erickson Writes, WRITES.com. So I'm available on all those places.
That is awesome. Thank you again for being on here. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, I told you this is someone that you need to start following. And if you go to her Instagram, because I'm already following her, I've been following her for a while. And it's funny that there's a lot of things that she puts out that's very entertaining. And then, of course, there's some points where like, is she sane? But again, what author is not sane? What reader is sane in the same? Anyways, but go out, follow her, support her, because I know we're going to be doing the same thing. We've been doing it for a while, so we're already on the bandwagon. That's going to happen. And again, one of the things that we really wanted to emphasize on this episode was, even if you're dealing with the chameleon effect, you're not alone. It is a double-edged sword. Just be careful about how much you're putting into other people, and enjoy it when people really put stuff back into you. Follow those people. Have them in your inner circle, because you're both going to be there to support one another. As an author, these are great things, but they can also be very harmful. They can drain you physically, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes even spiritually, depending on your views on that. The other thing is, I would definitely suggest that you start journaling. If you're wanting to write a memoir, start journaling, because it's a great tool to use to help you write. And like Lauren, again, she's been doing it for 20 years, which is basically since she was a baby. When you're doing it, you're getting those details that you would have forgot about 10, 15 years ago. Okay. Continue doing that. You're going to start noticing how you describe things, these emotions that you have, the surroundings. These things are going to help you. And of course, the final thing that I definitely want you to, again, to walk away with is understanding that if you're going to be a writer, if you're going to be someone that just wants to be a part of the publishing world, remember that all of these lists that we were talking about are all editorial. Now they're just slowly starting to get into using the book scans, the Nielson BookScans, the NDP, whatever you want to call it, but they are there. But you have to understand the story has to come first. That's why we're here. We want to unleash your creativity. We want to unleash the real you. And don't worry about if you're on the list or not, because that's a byproduct. The story is what people want. The accomplishments are going to come later. So until next time, when we have our walking vial of chaos with us again, and Miss Chelsea Rice, please continue to write, to inspire, to encourage one another, and keep sharing those stories because we want to hear you. We want to see you. So again, follow us at beyondthepenpodcast.com to learn more about us. You can see all of our links on social media there. You can learn about myself, about Chelsea, and all the great things that we have, the tips and tricks, and the other authors that we have interviewed. Lauren's going to be there. She's going to be giving us all of her information, so you can go and find her at her website, laurenericksonwrites.com. You can find her at Lauren Erickson with the 0, not the O, on Instagram. You can find her on YouTube, same place. I believe it's the same link and everything else, but we'll have those links on there for you. And of course, like I said, just enjoy life. Write it down, because I'm sure 20 years from now, you're not going to be like the publisher in the therapy trying to figure out the plot of their series. So until next time, folks, keep writing, keep inspiring, keep sharing, and unleashing your creativity.